2020, August 14th, 6:06 a.m. New paragraph. Now, to be absolutely 100% and completely clear, now, comma, there needs to be some biochemistry addition to this situation. If you create the biology, then you have an indentation between the eastern side of the Capitoline Hill, the northern portion, the northern wall of the Palatine Hill, comma, the southern wall of the Esquiline Hill, and the western portion of the Vilia Hill, which has the Temple of Venus on top of it, which is kind of a rather hardcore, redundant, wow, duh, comma, period, new paragraph. You have the internal structure, the makings, the operational understanding of that's an indentation. Because it's an indentation that's at least 100 feet deep based off of measuring from the hills around it. It used to be a couple hundred feet, but they've been relabeled, regraded, and the top portions of them have been, the stones have been removed to build various sort of things, also to remove the temples that used to be there and remove all aspects of even the hint of a temple up there or a building up there or something that would hurt the feelings of the conquerors. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Synoptic Gospels, Mark chapter 13. What he's taught, the bottom half of that paragraph is talking about the motivation behind, comma, the motivation of why the enemy comes and destroys is because their feelings are hurt, because they can't walk the righteous path. And Jacob's people not only can't walk the righteous path, they have difficulty morally, ethically, and biochemically not walking the righteous path. And the others around, new paragraph, are completely convinced that they're walking the righteous path despite the fact that they break all the rules. New paragraph. Now, the more there's work on this, the more there is functionality, structure, and the like to this situation is, comma, the more it brings into question the reality of the biology. He was going to the light place. Now, the biology is where things you put things comma, in, comma, indentations, comma. The things that you put inside indentations, comma, becomes slot tab A into slot B. Well, the Jacob and what he was doing becomes slot A, becomes tab A, and what Rome would be slot B, period, new paragraph. That being stated as a matter of absolute geology and biochemistry and the Torah biblical narrative, period, the more that is a reality, the bigger story this becomes. Now, how much of the period, new paragraph, Now, how much of this Gene Roddenberry knew, that's an entirely different comma. That's an entirely different story. That's an entirely different aspect of the situation, which that whole Jacob and the light place and the biology and such will be covered in a different section, period. New paragraph. The key elements are of that is the representation of Janus, which there's about 2 to 6 million sculptures of Janus. Which there's between 2 and 6 million sculptures of Janus. Those sculptures of Janus have a distinctive appendage to the body, which is not realistic at all. In fact, it's not really realistic to have an appendage that is as long as, if not longer than, the leg and or an arm, period. New paragraph. So you have the big, huge, tall Janus figure, the hill, which is where the hill used to be. And then you have an appendage that stretches to the Capitoline Hill. And then on the other side of the Capitoline Hill, you have a 100-foot deep, 200-foot deep indentation, which is really, really large. And the head of that indentation, the eastern portion of that indentation, is the Temple of Caesar, which Caesar, at some point, shape, or form of there, he was named for a military commander of the people of Alba Longa, and that's where they were after they were the POWs after they were captured in battle at Alba Longa. They were brought to Rome by Romulus, and said, "Oh, you can live on this hill over here, the Caelian Hill, Caelian, I think, period." That hill is where Caesar got his name from, which has a connection to, that may be the early whatever that language was, that language being a language that works from and defines impact, so that word CAE could be a language that, in whatever ancient language it is, that ancient language could be its version of the proto-hieroglyphic form of whatever Narmer was called in his own native language, which translates as striker, to strike, to impact, to inject, to impact, to put tab A into slot B. And Caesar, having his temple at the far far eastern end of that specific bowl, that slot B indentation points to the functionality and the reality of later on medical science uses that same foundation work to define the spelling for a cesarean section, which means to make a impact, put a scalpel or some other type of cutting instrument, a striking instrument, into a female's specific body, part of her anatomy, and then making a slit, opening that slit, and then allowing an unnatural birth for a child that has having some kind of a problem with a natural birth. So there's several aspects of female anatomy regarding direct aspects and interactions with the Forum of Rome, tall hills, as well as the road, as well as the Vatican Hill on the other side, on the west side of the Capitoline Hill, that road that leads to the Vatican, which used to be a couple 100-foot tall hill or collection of hills, which is strongly featured. These things are strongly featured in the history of Rome from day one to somewhere in the Middle Ages. If in some aspects of it's even still carrying forward into the present. Hence just because the Rome proper stopped being used as the center of government does not mean for any way, shape, any length of concept at all that the Memento Mori ceremony, which is what Rome is founded from. Period. Rome is founded from that functionality, that foundation structure of the Memento Mori ceremony. Now, new paragraph. Something of absolute dire importance in this exact situation. To mark this situation at 2600 BC, 2500 BC, to mark it with linguistics, etymology hidden in a way that the enemy would not figure out and be able to destroy, but still leave it as a obvious, well, duh. Jacob renamed Luz, meaning light. Luz means light. He renamed Luz to Memphis to emphasize the Memento Mori ceremony, to emphasize Pharaoh Mem, which is actually the hieroglyphic name for Abraham. Abraham is a Hebrew name which would not exist for another 1,000+ years. About 2600 BC, the first inklings of Hebrew were about 1300 BC. The Proto was not really around until around 12 and didn't actually form until itself realistically form until about 500 BC, somewhere there. So Mem is really important in this situation. So Abraham's name is in hieroglyphic is actually Mem, Pharaoh Mem. The Menkaure pyramid is the farthest south on the Giza Plateau, which is the fourth pyramid south from the north. You'd have Djedefre, which is the farthest north. Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure. Memkaure. Mem's place. So whatever Mem stands for in back then, which tentatively translates as All-Father. So you have Memkaure, you have Mem's place, and then you have the light place, and then you have Luz, which means light. And you have the pyramids that are the laboratory data analysis point for the incoming EM pulses from the array, which is the pyramids, the causeways, period. New paragraph. And in addition to that, you have